The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. They sat in a great chamber made of white stone on a world called Verith Prime. 7 species made up this council. They called themselves the Elder Races. They believed they were the wisest beings in all the universe. The Velthari were the oldest among them. They had blue skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were like black pools that showed no feeling. They spoke in cold voices and believed that order was more important than life itself. The Krethvin came next. They were tall and thin, with bodies like insects. They moved in quick, sharp motions. They cared only for logic and numbers. To them, every problem was a math equation to be solved. The Mordai were covered in thick fur, the color of rust. They had once been warriors, but now they called themselves peacekeepers. They followed the council without question. The Selene floated rather than walked. Their bodies glowed with soft light. They spoke of harmony and balance, but they never raised their voice against the others. The Torek had scales like metal and breath like fire. They were proud and saw themselves as protectors of the weak. But they had forgotten what it meant to protect. The Venakai were small and had many tentacles. They kept the records of the council. They wrote down every decision. They remembered everything. The Harith were the youngest of the elder races. They had joined the council only 3,000 years ago. They looked most like the creatures they would soon try to destroy. Together, these 7 races controlled over 2,000 star systems. They decided which species could grow. They decided which species could spread to new worlds. And they decided which species had to die. They called it Containment Protocol. They had done it many times before. When a new species became too dangerous or too wild, the council would vote. If the vote was yes, they would send their fleets. They would burn that species from the stars. 43 times in 12,000 years, the council had voted yes. 43 species had been erased. The council told themselves it was necessary. They told themselves they were keeping the galaxy safe. They slept well at night because they believed their own lies. On a day that seemed like any other, a Velthari sensor operator noticed something strange. A ship had appeared at the edge of their space. It was small and made of metal. It moved slowly. It sent out signals in a language no one had ever heard. The operator sent the information to his superiors. They sent it to theirs. Within days, the council knew about the small metal ship. They learned where it came from. They traced its path back across the stars to a small yellow sun, to a small blue world, to a species that called themselves Human. Ambassador Kethros of the Velthari stood before the council. He was old even by his people's standards. His blue skin had turned gray at the edges. His forearms were thin, but still strong. He had been ambassador for 500 years. He had voted to destroy 12 species. He felt nothing about it. The species calls itself humanity, he said. His voice was flat, like stones dropping into still water. They have existed for only 300,000 of their years. They developed space travel less than 2 centuries ago. They are primitive. They are aggressive. They fight among themselves constantly. He touched a device in his hand. A hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a blue and green world covered in white clouds. It was beautiful. The council did not see beauty. This is their homeworld, Kethros continued. They call it Earth. 7 billion of them live there. They have begun to send ships to other worlds. We have detected 12 large vessels moving toward distant stars. Colony ships. The Krethvin ambassador clicked his mandibles. They spread quickly for such a young species. Too quickly, Kethros said. Our projections show that within 500 years, they will reach our borders. Within 1,000 years, they could challenge our control of this sector. The Mordai ambassador scratched his fur. Have they shown hostility toward other species? They have not yet encountered other species, Kethros said. But their history shows a pattern of violence. They fight wars over resources. They fight over ideas. They even fight over the color of their skin. They are dangerous. The Cillian ambassador pulsed with soft light. Perhaps we could guide them. Teach them our ways. Kethros shook his head slowly. We have studied them carefully. They do not follow. They do not obey. They question everything. They would never accept our rule. They would fight us. Eventually, they would destroy themselves and take many of us with them. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what came next. The vote. I move for Containment Protocol 7, Kethros said. Complete sterilization of the homeworld before the infestation can spread further. The Tauric ambassador shifted on his pedestal. His scales scraped against the stone. The colony ships, he said. What of them? 12 ships carrying perhaps 200,000 individuals total, the Krethvan ambassador replied. Once the homeworld is gone, they will have no support. They will die on their own within generations. They are not worth the resources to hunt. The Tauric nodded slowly. He had once believed in protecting the weak. He had forgotten. One by one, the ambassadors voted. Blue light for yes. Red light for no. 7 blue lights filled the chamber. The vote was unanimous. Kethros felt nothing. The fleet will depart within the cycle. The human problem will be solved within the month. Far across the galaxy, humanity had no idea what was coming. Helena Vance was 42 years old. She had gray streaks in her dark hair and lines around her eyes from years of hard work. She was the captain of the colony ship Exodus Dawn. 200,000 souls slept in cold pods behind her. They were heading toward a world called New Eden. 17 light years from Earth. She stood on the bridge of her ship and looked at the stars. She thought about her daughter, Maya, who slept in one of those pods. Maya was only 12. She had been so excited about the new world. She had drawn pictures of what she thought it would look like. Helena thought about Earth. She missed the smell of rain. She missed the sound of birds in the morning. She missed her mother, who had been too old to make the journey. She had promised to send messages back home. She had promised to tell her mother about the new world. She did not know that she would never send those messages. The Council fleet arrived at Earth on a Tuesday. It was morning in North America. People were going to work. Children were going to school. Farmers were tending their crops. Lovers were holding hands. Babies were being born. The fleet appeared without warning. 300 warships. They were sleek and silver and beautiful in a terrible way. They surrounded the small blue world like wolves around a lamb. There was no broadcast. No warning. No demand for surrender. The Council did not negotiate with species marked for containment. They simply acted. The first shots came from the flagship. Great beams of white light that cut through the atmosphere like knives through paper. They struck the largest cities first. New York, Beijing, London, Moscow, Tokyo, São Paulo, Mumbai. One by one, the great cities turned to fire. The humans tried to fight back. They launched missiles. They sent their few military spacecraft into battle. It was like throwing pebbles at a hurricane. The Council ships swatted them aside without slowing their attack. The bombardment lasted 6 hours. Every city was hit. Every military base. Every power plant. Every dam. The oceans boiled where the beams touched them. The mountains crumbled. The forests burned. The sky turned black with ash and smoke. 7 billion people died. Some died instantly, turned to ash in less than a second. Some died slowly, trapped under rubble, burning in fires, choking on poison air. Children cried for parents who could not save them. Parents held children they could not protect. Old people who had survived wars and disasters found that their luck had finally run out. By the time the fleet stopped firing, Earth was no longer blue and green. It was black and gray. A dead world. A murdered world. Ambassador Kethros watched the final report from his quarters on Verith Prime. He saw the images of the burning planet. He noted the estimated casualties. He filed the report in the same folder as the 42 species that had come before. Then he went to dinner. He slept well that night. He dreamed of nothing at all. 17 light years away, Helena Vance received a distress signal. It came from Earth. It was broken and full of static. But through the noise, she could hear voices. Screaming voices. Crying voices. Voices begging for help that would never come. Ships in orbit, one voice said. They're firing on everything. The cities are gone. Everything is gone. If anyone can hear this, please, God, please help us. Then the signal cut to static. Then nothing? Helena stood frozen on her bridge. Her crew stared at her with wide eyes. No one spoke. No one could speak. She tried to contact Earth. No response. She tried to contact the moon base. No response. She tried to contact the Mars colony. Static. Then a weak voice. Exodus Dawn. This is Mars Colony 1. We saw it. We saw everything. Earth is gone. They're coming for us next. There's nothing we can. The signal died. Helena felt something break inside her. It was like a piece of her heart turned to ice and then shattered into a million pieces. Her mother was dead. Her friends were dead. Everyone she had ever known who was not on this ship was dead. Captain, her first officer, whispered. What do we do? Helena could not answer. She could only stare at the view screen that showed nothing but empty stars. Across the galaxy, 11 other colony ships received the same signals. 11 other captains felt the same breaking. 11 other crews watched their homeworld die through telescope feeds and desperate transmissions. On the Mayflower, too, Captain James Akanjo fell to his knees and wept. He had left his wife on Earth. She had been pregnant with their first child. On the Star of India, Captain Priya Sharma threw her coffee mug at the wall and screamed until her voice broke. Her parents, her brothers, her whole extended family had stayed behind. On the Northern Light, Captain Eric Lindgren simply stood in silence. His face showed nothing. Inside, something had gone very quiet. Very cold, very dangerous. On the Exodus Dawn, Helena Vance finally moved. She walked to the communication console. Her hands were shaking. Her voice was not. All colony ships. This is Captain Helena Vance of the Exodus Dawn. I am assuming emergency command under Protocol Omega. All ships will alter course immediately. Transmit your positions and fuel status. We need to find each other. We need to survive. And we need to remember. She paused. She looked at her crew. They were crying. Some of them were holding each other. They were broken and lost and terrified. They killed our world, Helena said. They killed everyone we loved. They think we are finished. They think we will scatter and die in the dark between stars. She straightened her spine. She lifted her chin. Something new burned in her eyes. Something that had not been there before. Something that the Council should have feared. They are wrong. In the weeks that followed, the 12 ships found each other. They gathered in a dark corner of space where no one would look for them. They counted their numbers. 2 million people. That was all. 2 million out of 7 billion. They counted their resources. They had food for 10 years if they rationed carefully. They had fuel for another 50 light years. They had tools and machines and seeds and animals. They had everything they needed to build a new world. But first, they needed to know what had happened. Helena sent probes back toward Earth. What they found made even the strongest among them weep. The planet was dead. The atmosphere was full of poison. The oceans had evaporated in many places. The land was covered in gray ash. Nothing moved. Nothing grew. Nothing lived. The probes also found debris. Pieces of the alien ships that had been damaged in the brief fight. Helena ordered the debris collected. Every scrap. Every fragment. Every piece of technology they could find. We need to understand them, she told her people. We need to learn how they think. How they fight. How they can be hurt. She did not say what everyone was thinking. She did not need to. The survivors gathered for a memorial. Every ship broadcast to every other ship. 2 million people watched as Helena Vance stood before a screen showing the dead Earth. We are the last, she said. The last of our kind. They took everything from us. Our world. Our families. Our future. She held up a small container. Inside was soil from Earth. It had been meant for the gardens of New Eden. Now it was the most precious substance in the universe. They want us to disappear. They want us to die in the dark and be forgotten. But we will not disappear. We will not die. And we will never, ever forget. The crowd was silent. Some held hands. Some held children. All of them listened. One day, Helena said, we will make them answer for what they did. One day, we will return to the stars they think they own. One day, they will learn what it means to make an enemy of humanity. She looked at the dead Earth on the screen. A single tear ran down her cheek. Then her face hardened like steel. But first, we survive. First, we build. First, we prepare. The Council thinks we are nothing. They will learn that they made a terrible mistake. She raised the container of Earth soil above her head. For Earth, for everyone we lost, for everyone who comes after. We remember. We survive. We will return. 2 million voices spoke as one. We remember. We survive. We will return. In the darkness between stars, humanity began its transformation. They found hidden worlds. They built secret bases. They studied the alien technology and began to understand it. They trained their children to fight. They taught them to remember. The Council forgot about them. To the Council, humanity was just another line in a very long record. Another problem solved. Another species erased. They had no idea what was coming. 20 years would pass before the galaxy heard from humanity again. When they did, the Council would learn that some mistakes cannot be undone. Some enemies cannot be killed. Some fires, once lit, burn until they consume everything around them. The humans were building, planning, and when they were ready, they would teach the Council the true meaning of fear. The transmission ended. The screen went dark. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the Turic ambassador laughed. It was not a happy laugh. She wants us to bring our fleets to her? To fight on ground of her choosing? Either she is insane, or she has something planned. It does not matter, the Mordai ambassador growled. We outnumber them 1,000 to 1. Whatever tricks they have, it will not be enough. Kethros thought about this. He thought about his grandson, dead on a station that should have been untouchable. He thought about the way the human ship had moved, the way their weapons had cut through shields that were supposed to be unbreakable. We should be cautious, he said slowly. This feels like a trap. Of course it is a trap, the Krethvan ambassador replied. But what choice do we have? If we do not respond to this challenge, we look weak. Species across the galaxy will see it. They will wonder if the Council can protect them. Some may even think about rebellion. He was right. Kethros knew it. The Council ruled through fear and respect. If they seemed afraid of a handful of human survivors, Everything could fall apart. "We go," Kethros said finally. "We bring the largest fleet in history. We crush them so completely that no one ever dares challenge us again." The vote was unanimous. Preparations began immediately. Word spread quickly. The humans were back. They had struck the council. They had challenged the council to open war. It was the biggest news in 1,000 years. On 100 worlds, species who had lived under council rule watched and waited. Some felt fear. If the humans lost, the council's revenge would be terrible. Others felt something else. Something that looked almost like hope. The Velthari High Command gathered their fleets. The Mordai called in every ship from every sector. The Krethvin calculated optimal formations. The Torek prepared their heaviest weapons. The Silene and Venakai and Harith all contributed what they could. In 30 days, they assembled the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. 12,000 warships, millions of soldiers. Enough firepower to shatter moons. Admiral Verthax, a Velthari legend with 100 victories, took command. He was old and cold and utterly ruthless. He had never lost a battle. He did not intend to start now. "These humans are brave," he told his officers. "I will give them that. But bravery is not enough against superior numbers and firepower. They have given us their location. They have invited us to destroy them. We will accept that invitation." His officers cheered. They were confident. How could they not be? They had more ships than the humans had people. It would be a slaughter. The fleet departed for the coordinates. 12,000 ships moving through folded space. An armada that darkened the stars. But far away, in the darkness between galaxies, Helena Vance watched them come. They took the bait, Maya reported from her position at the sensor console. All of them. Every major fleet. They are bringing everything. Helena nodded slowly. "Good. That is exactly what we wanted." Around her, the bridge crew worked with calm efficiency. They had prepared for this moment for 20 years. Every simulation, every plan, every prayer. It all came down to what happened next. How long until they arrive? Helena asked. 18 hours at their current speed. Helena turned to look at the tactical display. The dead red star hung at the center. Around it, hidden in the shadows of moons and asteroids, her fleet waited. 3,000 ships. 1/4 the size of what was coming for them. But they had advantages the council could not imagine. "Send the signal," she said. "All ships to final positions. All crews to battle stations. This is what we have been waiting for." The signal went out. Across the system, human ships powered up their engines. Soldiers checked their weapons one last time. Pilots strapped into their seats. Engineers ran final diagnostics on the new technologies that would give them an edge. In her quarters on the Ghost of Shanghai, Maya Vance looked at a small photograph. It showed a woman with dark hair and kind eyes. Her grandmother. She had never met her. She had only heard stories. "Today," Maya whispered. "Today we make them pay." She kissed the photograph and placed it in her pocket. Then she walked to her command chair and began the final preparations. Helena did the same. She had carried a picture of her mother for 20 years. It was worn and faded, but she could still see the face she missed so much. "I promised you," she said softly. "I promised we would return. Watch over us today, Mother. We are going to need all the help we can get." She straightened her uniform and walked onto the bridge. Her crew saluted. She returned the salute. "Today, we fight," she said. "Today, we show them what humanity can do. Today, we remind the galaxy that some fires cannot be extinguished." She sat in her command chair. The red star burned on the view screen. Somewhere out there, 12,000 enemy ships were rushing toward them. Let them come, she thought. We are ready. The hours passed slowly. Everyone tried to stay calm. Everyone failed. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. And then, like a storm breaking over the horizon, the Council fleet arrived. They came out of folded space in a wave of light and energy. 12,000 ships spreading out across the system. Warships and cruisers and battleships and dreadnoughts. The pride of 7 species. The hammer that had crushed countless enemies. Admiral Verthax stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Velthari Eternal Justice. He looked at the tactical display and frowned. "One ship," he said. "Only one ship is visible." It was true. In the center of the system, orbiting the dead red star, a single human vessel waited. It was the Pale Horse, Helena Vance's command ship. Verthax felt the first stirring of unease. This was wrong. The humans had challenged them to bring everything. Why would they show only one ship? "Scan the system," he ordered. "Find the rest of their fleet." His sensors swept the darkness. They found nothing. No hidden ships. No ambush waiting in the shadows. Just one small vessel against 12,000. "Perhaps it is a surrender," one of his officers suggested. "Perhaps they realize they cannot win and have come to beg for mercy." Verthax shook his head. No, the woman in the message did not look like someone who would surrender. There is something else happening here. He opened a channel to the human ship. "Human vessel, this is Admiral Verthax of the Galactic Council. You are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now, and I will grant you quick deaths. Resist, and you will suffer before you die." The response came immediately. Helena Vance's face appeared on his screen. She was smiling. "Admiral," she said, "thank you for accepting our invitation. We have been looking forward to meeting you. Where is the rest of your fleet?" "Where? Are the ships that attacked our outposts?" Helena's smile widened. "You will see them soon enough. First, I wanted to thank you personally." "Thank me?" "For coming. For bringing everyone. It makes things so much easier." Verthax felt the unease grow stronger. "You are insane. One ship cannot defeat 12,000. "You are right," Helena said. "One ship cannot. But I am not alone." She pressed a button, and the galaxy changed forever. Across the system, gravity wells surged to life. Technology the Council thought was impossible. Spatial distortions that grabbed the fleet and held it in place. Engines struggled against forces they could not overcome. Ships that had been ready to flee found themselves trapped. And then, from behind moons and within asteroid fields, and from the shadow of the dead star itself, the human fleet emerged. Not hundreds, not dozens, thousands. Verthax stared at his screen in disbelief. Where had they come from? How had they hidden so many ships? Helena's voice cut through his confusion. "You killed our world. You murdered our people. You thought you had broken us forever." The human ships moved into attack formation. They were smaller than his vessels, but there were so many of them, and they moved with a coordination that seemed almost supernatural. "You were wrong," Helena said. "We are not broken. We are not gone. We are here, and we are very, very angry." She cut the transmission. And then the battle began. In the 5th Nth year, they made contact with the galaxy again. It was an accident. A human scout ship had gone too far from the safe zones. It encountered a Velthari trading vessel. The traders saw the human ship and panicked. They had heard the stories about the extinct species from the small blue world. They had been told the humans were all dead. The scout ship did not attack. It simply sent a message. A single word in the Velthari language. "Remember." Then it vanished into the darkness. The traders reported what they had seen. The report made its way up the chain of command. Eventually, it reached the Council. Ambassador Kethros read the report with something that might have been concern, but he quickly dismissed it. One small ship meant nothing. The humans were scattered and weak. They posed no threat. He filed the report and forgot about it. This was a mistake. On Sanctuary, Helena heard about the encounter and smiled. "Let them wonder," she said. "Let them lose a little sleep. It will make what comes next even sweeter." The years continued to pass. The fleet grew. The soldiers trained. The hatred deepened. In the 18th year, Helena gathered her senior officers for a special meeting. They met in a chamber deep beneath the surface of Sanctuary. The room was plain and cold. A holographic display stood at the center. "It is almost time," Helena said. She was 60 years old now. Her hair was completely gray. Her face was lined with age and worry, but her eyes burned as bright as ever. She activated the display. A map of council space appeared. Thousands of star systems. Millions of ships. Billions of aliens who had no idea what was about to happen. "We have spent 20 years preparing for this moment," she continued. "We have built a fleet of 3,000 ships. We have trained over 100,000 soldiers. We have weapons that the Council cannot imagine." She pointed to specific locations on the map. Border outposts. Trade stations. Communication hubs. "We will begin with surgical strikes. We will hit them in 14 locations at exactly the same moment. We will show them that we are not gone. We will show them that we are coming." Admiral Okonjo stepped forward. He was an old man now, his dark skin turned gray at the edges. But his voice was still strong. "The strikes will be fast and complete," he said. "No survivors to report what happened. No evidence to tell them where we came from. They will be blind and confused. And then we will disappear again. We will let them panic. We will let them search. We will let them fear." Marcus Chun, now stooped with age but still brilliant, added his piece. "Our weapons are far superior to theirs. Our shields cannot be penetrated by anything in their arsenal. Ship for ship, we will destroy them. But they have numbers. That is why we must be smart. Hit hard, vanish, hit again. Never let them catch their breath." Helena looked around the room. She saw faces she had known for 20 years. Faces that had been young and are now old. Faces that had known grief and loss and endless waiting. "Are we ready?" she asked. The answer came from every throat at once. "We are ready." She nodded slowly. "Then we begin the final phase. 1 year from now, on the 20th anniversary of Earth's death, we strike. 1 year to finish our preparations. 1 year until the galaxy remembers that humanity is not gone." She raised her fist. The others did the same. "For Earth," she said. "For Earth," they answered. The meeting ended. The officers returned to their duties. Everyone had work to do. That night, Helena visited her daughter. Maya was now a captain in her own right, commanding a fast attack cruiser called the Ghost of Shanghai. She had her mother's determination and her father's tactical mind. She was one of the best pilots in the fleet. They sat together in Maya's small quarters and shared a bottle of wine. It was the last bottle made from earth grapes. They had been saving it for a special occasion. "Are you afraid?" Helena asked. Maya thought about it. "No," she said finally. "I have been waiting for this my whole life. Everything I am has been pointing toward this moment. How can I be afraid of something I was born for?" Helena nodded. She understood. She felt the same way. "I wish your grandmother could see what we have built," she said softly. "She would be so proud." Maya reached out and took her mother's hand. "She knows. Wherever she is, she knows." They sat in silence for a long time. Outside the small window, the stars burned cold and bright. Somewhere out there, the council was going about its business, never suspecting what was coming. In 1 year, everything would change. The final preparations began. Ships were checked and rechecked. Weapons were loaded. Pilots ran simulations until they could fly in their sleep. Soldiers wrote letters to loved ones, just in case they did not come back. Helena recorded a message. It would be broadcast across the galaxy when the strikes began. She wrote and rewrote it 100 times. She wanted to get it exactly right. In the end, she kept it simple. 20 years ago, you killed our world. You burned our cities. You murdered 7 billion people. You thought you had destroyed us. You were wrong. We are still here. We remember. And now, we are coming for you. She added one more line. A warning and a promise. You should have finished the job. The day finally came. The 20th anniversary of Earth's death. Across human space, people gathered to remember. They held pictures of loved ones they had lost. They lit candles in the darkness. They wept for what had been stolen from them. And then the fleet launched. 3,000 ships rose from hidden bases across a dozen star systems. They moved in perfect silence through the darkness of space. They were ghosts with weapons, shadows with fire. Helena stood on the bridge of the Pale Horse. Around her, her crew worked with quiet efficiency. Everyone knew their job. Everyone was ready. She looked at the stars and thought about her mother, about Shanghai, about the day the sky had turned to fire. "This is for you," she whispered. "This is for all of you." She turned to her communications officer. "Send the message. Let the galaxy know that humanity has returned." The message went out at the speed of light. It raced across the stars, carrying words of warning and promise. 20 years of silence was about to end, and the galaxy would never be the same. The first 5 years were the hardest. The survivors called them the dark years. It was a time of hunger and cold and endless work. It was a time when hope seemed like a distant memory. Helena Vance led her people to a world they named Sanctuary. It was a small planet orbiting a dim red star. The world was cold and rocky. The air was thin. Nothing grew on its surface. But it had caves. Deep caves that could hide them from the eyes that might be watching. The survivors dug into the rock. They built their homes underground. They set up farms using lights powered by the ship's reactors. They recycled every drop of water. They rationed every bite of food. Many died in those first years. The old and the sick were the first to go. The cold took some. Hunger took others. Disease swept through the tunnels more than once. There were no proper hospitals. There were not enough doctors. But humanity did not break. They had always been good at surviving. It was what they did. Helena walked through the tunnels every day. She knew every family by name. She held the hands of the dying. She comforted the grieving. She celebrated every birth like it was a miracle. Because it was. Every child born here is a victory, she told her people. Every child is proof that they failed. They wanted to end us. They wanted to wipe us from existence. But here we are, still breathing, still fighting, still alive. The children born on Sanctuary were different from those who had come from Earth. They had never seen a blue sky. They had never felt rain on their faces. They had never heard birds sing or watched clouds drift across the horizon. Earth was a story to them, a legend, a dream of something they would never know. But they knew the stories. Every child learned them from the day they could understand words. They learned about Earth, about its oceans and mountains and forests, about the people who had lived there, about the 7 billion voices that had been silenced in a single day. And they learned about the Council. They learned the names of the 7 races. They learned the name of Ambassador Kethros, who had called for their destruction. They learned about the vote that had sentenced their species to death. The children grew up with hatred in their hearts. It was not wild hatred, It was cold and patient and quiet. It was the kind of hatred that could wait 100 years if it needed to. Helena watched these children grow and felt proud. She also felt sad. They had lost something precious. They had lost the chance to be innocent. But that was not her fault. That was the council's doing. "We did not make them soldiers," she said to her officers one night. "The council did. We are simply giving them the tools they need." The tools began with the alien technology. Marcus Chun was the head of the science team. He was a thin man with thick glasses and hands that never stopped moving. Before Earth died, he had been a professor of physics at a university in Shanghai. Now he was the most important person in what remained of humanity. He and his team studied the debris from the battle over Earth. Every piece, every fragment, every circuit and wire and crystal. They took the alien machines apart and tried to understand how they worked. It was not easy. The technology was thousands of years ahead of anything humanity had ever built. The materials were strange. The energy patterns made no sense. More than once, Marcus wanted to give up, but then he would remember his wife. She had been at home in Shanghai when the bombardment came. He never got to say goodbye. He never got to tell her he loved her one more time. He worked harder. After 3 years, they had their first breakthrough. They figured out how the alien shields worked. The technology bent space itself around a ship, creating a bubble that weapons could not penetrate. It was brilliant. It was also flawed. "The shields have a frequency," Marcus explained to Helena. "Everything vibrates at a certain rate. If we can match that rate with our weapons, we can cut right through." Helena nodded slowly. "Can we build our own shields?" "Better than that," Marcus said with a thin smile. "We can build shields they cannot break, and weapons that break everything." The work continued. Year after year, the scientists unlocked new secrets. They learned how to fold space for faster travel. They learned how to create gravity wells that could trap ships. They learned how to build power cores that could light up a city. They took what the council had and made it better. That was what humans did. They adapted. They improved. They evolved. While the scientists worked, the military prepared. Admiral James Okonjo had been a captain when Earth died. He had watched his world burn and felt something die inside him. But something else had risen from the ashes. Something harder. Something sharper. He trained the survivors to fight. Every adult who could hold a weapon learned to use it. Every pilot learned to fly in ways that would seem impossible. Every soldier learned that surrender was not an option. "They will not take prisoners," Okonjo told his troops. "They see us as vermin to be exterminated. So we will not fight like soldiers fighting soldiers. We will fight like the hunted who have become the hunters." He created new tactics. The alien ships were big and powerful but slow to react. Human ships would be small and fast and deadly. They would strike from the shadows and vanish before the enemy could respond. He studied the alien military structure. The council races were arrogant. They had not faced a real enemy in thousands of years. They had grown lazy and overconfident. That would be their weakness. The children trained too. As soon as they could walk, they learned to run. As soon as they could read, they learned strategy. As soon as they could reach the controls, they learned to pilot. They called themselves the Ash Generation. They were the children of the fire, the heirs of the dead. They had been born in darkness, and they would bring darkness to those who had wronged them. Maya Vance was among them. She was Helena's daughter. She had been 12 when Earth died. Now she was a young woman with her mother's determination and her father's steady hands. She trained harder than anyone. She wanted to be the best. She wanted to be worthy of what was coming. "Why do you push yourself so hard?" Another young soldier asked her one day. Maya looked at him with eyes that were far too old for her face. "Because somewhere out there, The creatures who killed my grandmother are sleeping peacefully. They think they are safe. They think we are gone. I want to be the one who shows them how wrong they are." The young soldier nodded. He understood. They all understood. Helena watched her daughter grow into a warrior and felt her heart break and swell with pride at the same time. This was not the life she had wanted for Maya. She had wanted Maya to see New Eden, to build a home, to fall in love and have children and grow old in peace. But that future had been burned away with Earth. There was only one path now, and they would walk it together. In the 10th year, the shipyards were finished. They had been built inside a massive asteroid belt near Sanctuary. The asteroids provided materials and cover. From the outside, it looked like nothing special. Just rocks floating in space. But inside those rocks, humanity was building its revenge. The first ship was completed on the anniversary of Earth's death. They called it the Pale Horse, after the ancient story of the rider who brought death. It was not a beautiful ship. It was ugly and brutal and covered in weapons. It looked like it had been built by angry gods. Helena stood on its bridge and felt something she had not felt in 10 years. Hope. This is only the beginning, she told the workers who had built it. We will build 100 more, 1,000 more. We will fill the darkness with ships, and then we will return to the light. The workers cheered. They had worked 18-hour days for years. They had gone without sleep and comfort and joy. But looking at the Pale Horse, they felt it was all worth it. More ships followed. The scientists kept improving the designs. Each ship was faster than the last. Each was deadlier than the last. Each was a promise written in metal and fire. Admiral Okonjo organized the growing fleet. He divided it into strike groups and battle wings. He ran endless simulations, preparing for every possible scenario. He wanted no surprises when the time came. "We get one chance," he told his officers. "One chance to hit them so hard that they never recover. If we fail, humanity dies. If we succeed, we change the galaxy forever." No one planned to fail. The Velthari border station, called Serenity's Watch, had stood for 3,000 years. It was a massive structure, shaped like a silver flower floating in space. 3,000 soldiers and workers called it home. It watched over the trade routes that connected the core worlds to the outer territories. Nothing moved through this sector without Serenity's Watch knowing about it. Commander Kethros the Younger was in charge of the station. He was the grandson of the ambassador who had voted to destroy Earth. He had heard the story many times. His grandfather spoke of it like it was nothing special. Just another day at work. Just another species erased for the greater good. The younger Kethros had never questioned this. He had been raised to believe in the Council's wisdom. The elder races knew best. Some species had to die so that others could live in peace. It was simple math. He was in his office when the alert came. A sensor technician reported an unknown vessel approaching the station. Small, strange design, moving fast. Kethros felt annoyed rather than worried. Probably smugglers trying something foolish. He ordered a standard hailing on all frequencies. No response. He ordered another. The response came, but not in any way he expected. Every speaker on the station crackled to life at the same moment. Every screen flickered and displayed the same image, a small blue world hanging in the darkness of space. Then the sound began. It was a child crying, a human child, screaming in terror. The cry was cut short by a roar of fire and destruction. Explosions, screams of the dying, then silence. Kethros felt something cold run down his spine. He knew what this was. He had heard his grandfather describe it. The death of the human homeworld. Before he could react, the attack began. The human ship moved like nothing he had ever seen. It twisted and spun through space with impossible speed. His gunners tried to track it. They could not. It was too fast, too unpredictable. The first shots from the human ship punched through the station's shields like they were not there. The great silver flower shuddered as explosions ripped through its outer sections. Air rushed out into the void. Bodies followed. Kethros shouted orders. Seal the breaches. Return fire. Protect the reactor core. His crew tried to obey. They were too slow. The human weapons were too precise. The ship made 3 passes. Each pass brought more destruction. The defense turrets were destroyed first. Then the communication arrays. Then the hangar bays where the station's fighters were trying to launch dot in 11 minutes. It was over. Kethros lay on the floor of his broken command center. The lights had failed. Emergency power flickered red. Around him, his officers lay dead or dying. Blood floated in the zero gravity. The station was coming apart. Through a crack in the hull, he could see the human ship. It had stopped moving. It hung in space like a predator watching its prey die. A final message came through the static. A human voice, speaking in the common trade language that everyone understood. This is for Earth. This is for 7 billion. This is just the beginning. Then, the ship turned and vanished into the darkness. Kethros died 30 minutes later. He never stopped wondering how this had happened. His grandfather had told him the humans were extinct. His grandfather had lied. The same scene played out in 13 other locations at exactly the same time. 14 outposts. 7 different council races. All struck within minutes of each other. A Krethvan communication hub went silent. A Mordai patrol fleet was reduced to debris. A Silian diplomatic vessel was crippled. A Torek-fueled depot exploded. A Venakai listening post was destroyed. A Harith trading station was gutted. And everywhere, the same message. The same recording. The same words. This is for Earth. This is for 7 billion. This is just the beginning. The galaxy woke up to chaos. For 20 years, the Council had believed humanity was dead. A minor footnote in history. A problem solved and forgotten. Now that belief shattered like glass thrown against stone. Emergency channels flooded with panicked reports. Station commanders demanded reinforcements. Fleet admirals called for orders. Politicians screamed at each other, looking for someone to blame. On Verith Prime, the Council convened an emergency session. The 7 ambassadors gathered in the Great Chamber where so many decisions had been made. But this time, there was no calm. No confidence. Only fear. Ambassador Kethros stood at his pedestal. He was much older now. His blue skin faded to near white. His forearms trembled slightly. He had not slept in 2 days. The attacks were coordinated, he reported. 14 targets struck simultaneously. All stations destroyed or crippled. Estimated casualties, over 50,000. The Krethvan ambassador clicked his mandibles in agitation. How is this possible? Our sensors showed no fleet movements. No buildup of forces. Where did they come from? We do not know, Kethros admitted. It hurt to say those words. The Valthari prided themselves on knowing everything. The Mordai ambassador slammed his fist on his podium. His fur bristled with anger. We killed them. 20 years ago, we burned their world. How can there be this many of them left? The Silian ambassador pulsed with anxious light. The colony ships. We knew they existed. We chose not to pursue them. They were supposed to die on their own. The Torek ambassador roared. His scales scraped against stone as he moved. A few 100,000 scattered across the void. No resources. No support. They should have starved within a generation. The Venakai ambassador, keeper of records, spoke in his soft voice. Clearly, they did not starve. Clearly, They found resources. Clearly, we underestimated them. Then, we will not underestimate them again, Cathro said. We will find them. We will destroy them. All of them. Every ship, every station, every last human. This time, we will be thorough. The Harith ambassador raised a hand. He was the youngest of the group, and often the most cautious. What if we cannot find them? They struck 14 targets and vanished. We have no idea where they came from or where they went. Cathros opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, an alarm sounded. A message was coming in, not through normal channels. It was broadcasting on every frequency at once. The great display at the center of the chamber flickered. A human face appeared. A woman with gray hair and burning eyes. She wore a military uniform. Behind her, the bridge of a warship was visible. "Members of the Galactic Council," she said. "My name is Admiral Helena Vance. 20 years ago, you murdered my world. 7 billion people. Families, children, dreamers, all of them gone in a single day." She paused. Her eyes seemed to look directly at each ambassador. "You thought you had killed us all. You were wrong. We survived. We grew. We remembered. And now, we are going to teach you what it means to face an enemy who has nothing left to lose." The ambassadors stared at the screen. None of them spoke. "Your border stations are just the beginning. Every day, more of your ships will disappear. More of your outposts will burn. You will not know when or where we will strike. You will not know how to stop us. Fear will spread through your empire like fire through dry grass." Helena leaned forward. "But I am not without mercy. I am giving you a chance. One chance. Meet us in battle. Bring your fleets. Bring everything you have. Face us in open war." She smiled. It was not a kind smile. "These are the coordinates." A string of numbers appeared on the screen. A dead star in empty space. "Be there in 30 days. Bring everyone." The first shots of the battle came from the human fleet. 3,000 ships opened fire at the same moment. The darkness of space lit up with weapons fire. Beams of concentrated energy. Missiles that twisted through the void. Projectiles accelerated to impossible speeds. Admiral Verthax shouted orders. His officers scrambled to respond. But everything was happening too fast. The gravity wells held his fleet in place. His ships could not maneuver. They could not retreat. They could only stand and take the punishment. "Return fire!" Verthax roared. "All ships, target the nearest enemy vessels." The Council fleet tried to obey. Thousands of weapons turned toward the attacking humans. Energy beams lanced out across the void. Missiles launched by the hundreds. For a moment, it seemed like the massive Council fleet might overwhelm the smaller human force with pure firepower. Then the shots reached the human shields, and nothing happened. The weapons fire splashed against invisible barriers and simply disappeared. The energy was absorbed. The missiles detonated harmlessly against walls of force that should not have existed. Not a single human ship took damage. Verthax felt his heart stop. That is impossible. Those shields, that technology does not exist. But it did exist. The humans had spent 20 years studying Council weapons. They had learned every weakness. They had built shields specifically designed to counter everything the Council had. The human weapons, on the other hand, cut through Council shields like they were made of paper. A Velthari cruiser exploded on Verthax's left. A Mordai battleship broke apart on his right. Everywhere he looked, Council ships were dying. The beautiful silver vessels of the elder races were being torn to pieces by ugly human warships that moved like angry ghosts. "Concentrate fire on their largest ships," Verthax ordered. overwhelmed their shields with volume. The Council fleet tried. They poured everything they had at the human dreadnoughts. Hundreds of weapons hitting a single target at the same time. The human shields flickered. They wavered. But they did not fall. And then the human ships struck back, and more Council vessels died. Maya Vance flew the Ghost of Shanghai through the heart of the battle. Her fingers danced across the controls. Her ship twisted and spun and struck with deadly precision. Around her, her crew worked in perfect harmony. 3 Vilthari cruisers on our left, her weapons officer called out. "Locking targets." "Take them," Maya said calmly. The Ghost of Shanghai opened fire. 3 shots. 3 explosions. 3 cruisers reduced to debris in less than 10 seconds. Maya did not celebrate. There was no joy in this. Only duty. Only justice. Only the promise she had made to the grandmother she had never known. "Find me the next target," she said. "We have a lot more work to do." Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out again and again. Human ships moved with speed and coordination that the Council forces could not match. They struck from unexpected angles. They vanished into the chaos and reappeared somewhere else. They worked together like the fingers of a single hand. The Ash generation had trained for this their entire lives. Every simulation, every exercise, every hour of practice had led to this moment. They knew their ships. They knew their weapons. They knew their enemy, and they knew that failure was not an option. Admiral Okonjo commanded the left flank of the human formation. His flagship, the Lagos Fury, led a wing of 500 ships against the Mordai battle group. The Mordai were proud warriors. They had never retreated from a fight. They threw themselves at the human ships with everything they had. It was not enough. Okonjo had studied Mordai tactics for years. He knew how they thought. He knew how they fought. He knew their weaknesses. "Draw them in," he ordered. "Let them think they are winning. Then spring the trap." His ships fell back. The Mordai pressed forward, sensing victory. They did not notice the human ships circling around behind them. They did not see the trap closing. When the order came, the human forces struck from all sides. The Mordai formation shattered. Their flagship was crippled in the first volley. Their admiral died in the second. In 30 minutes, an entire battle group was destroyed. Okonjo felt nothing. He remembered his wife. He remembered his unborn child. He remembered the day the sky had turned to fire. "Find me the next target," he said. "This is not over yet." On the Pale Horse, Helena Vance watched the battle unfold on her tactical display. Green dots were human ships. Red dots were Council ships. When the battle had begun, the red had outnumbered the green 4-1. The numbers were evening out. "Status report," she said. Her first officer checked his console. "We have lost 400 ships. The Council has lost over 3,000. Their formation is breaking apart. Several groups are trying to retreat, but the gravity wells are holding them in place." Helena nodded. The plan was working, but the battle was far from over. The Council still had thousands of ships. Even trapped and confused, they were dangerous. "Keep the pressure on," she ordered. "Hit them from every angle. Do not let them regroup." The battle raged on. Hour after hour, the two fleets tore at each other. The Council forces fought with desperation. They knew they were losing. They knew they were dying. But they had nowhere to run. Some captains tried to surrender. They broadcast their intentions on all frequencies. They lowered their shields and shut down their weapons. Human ships approached these surrendering vessels and took them under guard. Prisoners were taken. Lives were spared. Other captains refused to give up. They fought until their ships were broken around them. They died at their posts, cursing the humans with their last breath. These captains received no mercy. Their ships were destroyed without hesitation. Verthax watched his empire die around him. The proud fleet of the Galactic Council, the greatest military force in history, was being systematically dismantled by a species that should not have existed. "How is this happening?" he whispered. "How can they be doing this?" His first officer lay dead on the floor. His bridge was full of smoke and sparks. Half of his systems were offline. The Eternal Justice, his mighty flagship, was crippled and drifting. He thought about his career. 100 battles. 100 victories. He had never lost. He had never even come close to losing. He had believed himself invincible. Pride. It had all been pride. The council had been so certain of their superiority that they had never imagined anyone could challenge them. They had grown soft and lazy. They had forgotten what it meant to face a real enemy. The humans had not forgotten. The humans had spent 20 years doing nothing but preparing for this moment. Every day, they had trained. Every night, they had dreamed of revenge. They had built their entire society around a single purpose: this battle, and now they were winning. A human voice crackled through Varthas' speakers. "Council flagship, this is Captain Maya Vance of the Human Expeditionary Force. Your fleet is defeated. Your ship is crippled. You have one chance to surrender. Take it or die." Verthax looked at the bodies around him. He looked at the fires burning on his bridge. He looked at the tactical display that showed mostly green dots now, the red dots shrinking by the minute. He had never surrendered. Never in 100 battles. Never in 500 years of service. But he had also never lost. "I surrender," he said. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. "I surrender." "Stand by for boarding," Maya replied. "If your crew resists, we will destroy what is left of your ship. If they cooperate, they will live." Verthax gave the order. His surviving crew put down their weapons. They opened the airlocks, and they waited. Human soldiers boarded the Eternal Justice within the hour. They moved through the broken corridors with weapons ready. They were efficient and professional. They took prisoners without unnecessary cruelty. Maya Vance walked onto the bridge of the enemy flagship. She found Verthax sitting in his command chair, surrounded by human soldiers. He looked up at her with eyes that held no hope. "You have won," he said. "What will you do now? Destroy our worlds? Kill our children? Become what we were?" Maya looked at him for a long moment. She thought about her grandmother. She thought about Earth. She thought about all the stories she had heard growing up. "That is not my decision," she said finally. "That is for the Admiral to decide." She turned to her soldiers. "Take him to the Pale Horse. My mother will want to speak with him." The battle lasted 4 more hours. By the end, the Council fleet was broken beyond repair. 7,000 ships destroyed. 3,000 more captured. Only 2,000 managed to escape when the gravity wells finally failed. Humanity had lost 1,800 ships, 60% of their fleet. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers dead or wounded. Helena stood on her bridge and looked at the numbers. So many dead. So many families that would receive news of loss. So many children who would grow up without parents. But they had won. Against impossible odds, against the mightiest military force in galactic history, humanity had won. "Admiral," her communications officer said, "the enemy flagship has been secured. Admiral Verthax is being brought aboard." Helena nodded. "Good. Have him brought to my ready room. I want to speak with him alone." She walked off the bridge. Her legs were tired. Her eyes burned from hours of staring at tactical displays. But she could not rest yet. There was still work to do. Verthax was waiting for her when she arrived. He stood in the center of the small room, his hands bound in front of him. He was tall and proud, even in defeat. His blue skin had turned pale. His forearms hung limply at his sides. "Admiral Verthax," Helena said. "Please, sit." He did not move. "I prefer to stand, as you wish." Helena sat in her own chair and looked at him. "Do you know who I am?" "You are Helena Vance, commander of the human forces, the woman who destroyed my fleet." "I am also the woman who watched her world burn," Helena said. 20 years ago, I stood on my bridge and listened to the screams of 7 billion people dying. I saw the cities turn to fire. I saw the oceans boil. I saw everything I loved reduced to ash and smoke. Verthax said nothing. What was there to say? "My mother was on that world," Helena continued. "She was an old woman, kind, gentle. She had never hurt anyone in her life. She died in the bombardment. Not quickly. The reports say her city took 3 hours to fall. 3 hours of fire and terror before the end." She paused. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned. "I have spent 20 years thinking about what I would do when this moment came. 20 years imagining all the ways I could make your council pay for what they did. I could destroy your homeworlds. I could kill your families. I could do to you exactly what you did to us." Verthax looked at her. "Then do it? We expected nothing else. You are humans. You are barbarians. Violence is all you know." Helena smiled. It was a sad smile. "That is what you believe, is it not? That we are monsters. That we are dangerous. That we had to be destroyed before we could threaten your perfect order." She stood and walked to the window. Outside, the wreckage of the battle drifted slowly past. Broken ships. Dead soldiers. The remains of 2 empires colliding. "You were right to fear us," she said. "We are dangerous. When you push us, we push back. When you hurt us, we hurt you in return. When you try to destroy us, we become something terrible. You created this, Admiral. Every life lost today, human and council alike, is on your hands." She turned back to face him. "But you were also wrong. We are not just monsters. We are capable of more than violence. We can choose to be better. And today, I am going to prove that." Verthax frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean that we have won. We could destroy your homeworlds tomorrow. We have the power. We have the will. But we are not going to do it." The Admiral stared at her. "You are letting us live?" "I am letting you live," Helena confirmed. "All of you. Every species. Every world. Every child. We are not you. We will not become you. We survived extinction to become something more than exterminators." She walked closer to him. Her eyes locked with his. "You will tell your people what happened here. You will tell them that humanity returned. You will tell them that we defeated the greatest fleet in history. And you will tell them that when we had the power to destroy everything, we chose mercy instead." Verthax did not understand. His entire worldview had been built on the idea that the strong destroyed the weak. That was how the galaxy worked. That was how it had always worked. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you spare us after what we did to you?" Helena looked at him with something that might have been pity. "Because we are not you. Because we believe in something better. Because the dead of Earth do not want us to become monsters in their name." She paused. "And because the galaxy needs to remember, not just what you did to us, but what we chose to do in return. That memory will last longer than any destruction we could cause." She called for the guards. "Take him to a holding cell. Treat him with respect. He is our prisoner, not our victim." The guards led Verthax away. He went without resistance. His mind was still trying to process what had happened. What was happening? Helena stood alone in her ready room. The window showed the debris field that had been the council fleet. So many dead. So much destruction. And it was finally over. She pulled out the photograph of her mother. It was worn and faded, but she could still see the kind face, the gentle smile. "I kept my promise," she whispered. "We survived. We returned. We won. And we did it without becoming what they were." A tear ran down her cheek. Then another. For the first time in 20 years, Helena Vance allowed herself to cry. Not tears of grief. Not tears of anger. Tears of relief. The battle was over. The war was won. And humanity had proven that it was worthy of the stars. Now came the hard part. Building a future. Finding peace. Making sure that nothing like this ever happened again. Helena wiped her eyes and straightened her uniform. There was work to do. There was always work to do. But for now, for just this moment, she allowed herself to feel hope. The darkness had been long, but the dawn was finally coming. The great chamber on Verith Prime had never known silence like this. For 12,000 years, the voices of the elder races had echoed off its white stone walls. Decisions had been made here. Laws had been written. Species had been condemned. The chamber had seen triumph and tragedy, celebration and sorrow, but it had never seen defeat. Not like this. The 7 pedestals stood empty. The ambassadors who usually occupied them with such pride now knelt on the cold floor below. Their hands were bound. Their heads were bowed. Around them, human soldiers lined the walls, weapons ready but pointed at the floor. Ambassador Kethros knelt at the center of the group. He was very old now, his blue skin almost white with age. His forearms trembled. His eyes stared at the floor. He could not bear to look up at what was coming. The doors to the chamber opened. Admiral Helena Vance walked in alone. She wore her military uniform, but it was simple and unadorned. No medals, no decorations. She did not need them. Everyone in the galaxy knew who she was now. She walked to the center of the chamber. She stood in a spot where no outsider had ever been permitted to stand. The sacred ground of the elder races. For a long moment, she said nothing. She looked at the kneeling ambassadors. She looked at the empty pedestals. She looked at the ancient walls that had witnessed so much history. "Rise," she said finally. The ambassadors did not move. They expected execution. They expected torture. They expected humanity to do to them what the council had done to so many others. I said, "Rise." Helena's voice was firm, but not cruel. "I will not speak to your backs. Stand up and face me." Slowly, reluctantly, the ambassadors stood. They looked at her with fear in their eyes. They looked at her with fear in their eyes. They looked at her with fear in... Kethros was the last to rise. He was the one who had called for Earth's destruction. He was the one who had started all of this. "Ambassador Kethros," Helena said, "we meet at last. I have thought about you often over the past 20 years. I have imagined this moment many times." Kethros said nothing. What was there to say? "In my imagination, this moment ended in many different ways," Helena continued. "Sometimes I killed you with my own hands. Sometimes I made you watch your world burn the way you made us watch ours. Sometimes I found creative methods of punishment that would make you suffer for years." The other ambassadors shifted nervously. The human soldiers remained still. "But imagination and reality are different things," Helena said. "In imagination, revenge feels sweet. In reality, it is just more death, more pain, more destruction. And I am tired of destruction." She turned and walked to the great window that looked out over the capital city of Verith Prime. It was a beautiful city, silver spires reaching toward the sky. gardens floating between buildings, millions of Velthari going about their lives, unaware of what was happening in this chamber. "We have calculated," she said, "that your containment protocols have ended the existence of 43 species over 12,000 years. 43 unique civilizations, trillions of lives, cultures and arts and sciences and dreams, all of them erased because you feared what they might become." She turned back to face the ambassadors. "We could end you. Every world, every station, every ship, every last member of every council race. We have the means. Our fleets are positioned above each of your homeworlds right now. One word from me, and the bombardment begins." The ambassadors looked at each other. This was it. This was the moment they had been dreading. Helena let the silence stretch. She let them feel the weight of their own history pressing down on them. She let them understand, truly understand, that their lives were in her hands. Then she spoke again. "But we will not do it." Confusion replaced fear on the ambassadors' faces. Kethros looked up at her with disbelief. "You will not?" he said. "Why? We killed your world. We murdered your people. We tried to erase your species from existence. Why would you show us mercy?" Helena smiled. It was a sad smile, full of pain and wisdom and something that might have been hope. "Because we did not survive extinction to become exterminators ourselves. Because we spent 20 years learning how to fight, but we also spent 20 years thinking about who we want to be. Because the children who lost their grandparents on Earth deserve a future that is about more than just revenge." She walked back to the center of the chamber. "You will live. All of you. Every member of every council race. You will tell your children and your children's children what happened here. You will tell them about the species you tried to erase, and how that species chose to let you live when they had every right to destroy you." The Tauric ambassador spoke up. His voice was rough with emotion. "What do you want from us? What are your terms?" Helena nodded. She had been waiting for this question. "First, the containment protocols end today, forever. No more species will be judged unworthy. No more worlds will be burned because their people developed in ways that frightened you. Every species gets a chance to reach the stars. Every species gets a chance to prove what they can become." The ambassadors looked at each other. This was a fundamental change to how the galaxy had been governed for thousands of years. "Second, the human union will take a seat on this council. Not as conquerors, not as rulers, as equals. We will have a voice in the decisions that affect the galaxy. We will make sure that what happened to us never happens to anyone else." Helena paused to let this sink in. "Third, every year on the anniversary of Earth's burning, the Council will observe a day of silence. No business, no celebrations, no pretending it did not happen. You will remember what you did, and you will remember what we chose to do in return." She looked at Kethros directly. "These are not requests. These are demands. You will accept them because you have no choice. But I hope that in time, you will understand why we made them. I hope that in time, you will see that this was not weakness. It was strength. The hardest kind of strength there is." Kethros stared at her for a long moment. His mind was struggling to understand. His entire worldview had been built on the idea that power meant destruction. That strength meant crushing those who opposed you. And yet here was this human woman, who had more power than anyone in the galaxy at this moment, choosing not to use it. "I do not understand you," he admitted. "Your species, your people. You are unlike anything we have ever encountered." Helena nodded. "Yes, we are. That is why you should have left us alone. And that is why, despite everything you did, you will live to see what we become next." She turned to her soldiers. "Unbind them." They are no longer our prisoners. They are our partners in building a new galaxy. The soldiers stepped forward and removed the bindings from the ambassadors' hands. Some of the ambassadors rubbed their wrists. Others simply stood in shock, unable to process what was happening. Helena walked toward the door. She paused at the threshold and looked back. The first session of the new council will convene in 1 month. I expect all of you to be there. We have a great deal of work to do. Then she was gone. The ambassadors stood in silence for a long time. Finally, the Cillian ambassador pulsed with soft light. "What just happened?" she asked. Kethros shook his head slowly. I believe we just witnessed the birth of a new era, one that we never imagined possible." The Mordai ambassador scratched his fur nervously. "They could have killed us. Every one of us. Every member of our species. They had every right, every reason. But they did not," the Harith ambassador said. He was young, as ambassadors went. Young enough to see things differently. They chose another path. A harder path. A better path. Kethros thought about this. He thought about his long career. All the votes he had cast. All the species he had condemned. He had believed he was doing what was necessary. What was right. He had been wrong. "We made a terrible mistake," he said quietly. 20 years ago, we made the worst mistake in the history of the Council. And today, that mistake was forgiven. He did not know if he could live with that. He did not know if he deserved to live with that. But he would try. For the first time in his long life, Ambassador Kethros would try to be something better than what he had been. In the months that followed, the galaxy changed. Word of the battle and its aftermath spread to every corner of known space. Species who had lived in fear of the Council for thousands of years heard the news and dared to hope. The humans were different. The humans had won and chosen mercy. Maybe the galaxy could be different too. The Human Union took its seat on the Council. Helena Vance was their first ambassador. She sat in the chamber where her species had been condemned to death, and she spoke of peace and cooperation and a future where no one had to live in fear. Some of the old council members resisted. They did not want to change. They did not want to share power with a species they had once tried to destroy. But they were in the minority, and they no longer had the strength to impose their will. The containment protocols were abolished. The records were opened. For the first time, the galaxy learned the true extent of what the Council had done. 43 species. Trillions of lives. A history written in blood and fire. There was outrage. There was grief. There were calls for justice that went beyond what Helena had demanded. But the Human Union stood firm. The past could not be changed. The dead could not be brought back. All they could do was build a better future. And they did. New alliances formed. Species that had been isolated by fear began to reach out to each other. Trade routes opened. Technologies were shared. Old enemies became new friends. The galaxy began to heal. On the anniversary of Earth's burning, the Council observed the first day of silence. Every government building was closed. Every flag was lowered. Every species remembered what had been lost and what had been chosen in response. Helena stood at a window in the Council building and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, in the empty space where Earth had once orbited, a new project was underway. They called it New Earth. It would take decades to complete, maybe centuries. But humanity was building a new homeworld, a place to remember what they had lost and celebrate what they had become. Maya Vance stood beside her mother. She was a woman now, no longer the young soldier who had fought at the Battle of the Red Star. She had earned new scars and new wisdom. She had learned things about herself and her species that she had never expected. "Do you think they understand?" Maya asked. The Council. The other species. Do they understand why we did what we did? Helena thought about this for a long moment. Some of them do. Others never will. But understanding is not the point. The point is that we know. We know who we are and what we believe in. That is what matters. Maya nodded. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the photograph she had carried through the battle. Her grandmother's face looked up at her, forever frozen in a moment of kindness. I wish she could see this, Maya said. I wish she could see what we built. Helena put her arm around her daughter. She can. Wherever she is, she knows. All of them know. The 7 billion. They are watching over us. They are proud of what we have become. They stood in silence for a while, mother and daughter, looking at the stars. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed it. Not through destruction, but through something harder. Something more lasting. They had chosen to be better than their enemies. They had chosen to offer hope instead of despair. It would not be easy. There would be challenges ahead. Old hatreds would not die quickly. Trust would have to be built over generations. The scars of the past would take a long time to heal. But for the first time in a long time, healing was possible. On 100 worlds, children grew up hearing a new story. Not the story of a species that had been almost destroyed. The story of a species that had risen from the ashes. That had defeated the mightiest empire in the galaxy. And that had chosen, when given the power to destroy everything, to build something better instead. They called it the human way. It became a philosophy, a movement, a beacon for species who had been beaten down by the old order. The Council would never forget the day humanity struck back with total force. The battle, the devastation, the complete reversal of everything they had believed. But more importantly, they would never forget the day humanity chose to stop. That was the true victory. Not the battle. Not the conquest. Not the power. The choice. Helena Vance retired from the Council 5 years after taking her seat. She passed the role to younger leaders, to the Ash generation who had fought beside her and shared her vision. She returned to Sanctuary, the world where humanity had survived its darkest years, and spent her final days walking the tunnels where she had once led her people through the darkness. She died peacefully, surrounded by her family. Her last words were simple. We did it. We survived. We became something worth being. Her body was cremated. Her ashes were sent to New Earth, where they were placed in the foundation of the new capital city. Every human who walked those streets would walk on the memory of the woman who had led them from extinction to triumph. But the story did not end with her death. It continued. It grew. It spread across the galaxy like light spreading from a newborn star. Because the story was never just about Helena Vance. It was about all of them. The 7 billion who had died. The 2 million who had survived. The generations who had been born in the darkness and chosen to reach for the light. It was about what it means to be human. Not the violence, though humans could be violent when they needed to be. Not the vengeance, though humans could seek justice for terrible wrongs. Not the power, though humans could build power that shook the foundations of empires. It was about the choice. The choice to be more than what your enemies expect. The choice to be better than what your anger demands. The choice to look at a galaxy that tried to destroy you and say, we will not become what you are. That was the human way. That was what the galaxy would remember. Not the day humanity struck back with total force. The day humanity chose mercy instead. And in that choice, they changed everything. Forever.